All right, so let's go back here to our scene now. Okay, so let's see. What are we? So we're going to have some dialogue with Mary and this angel. So first of all, where do we want to put the angel? Do we? Does the angel come to Mary, or does Mary come upon the angel? Let's see. So the angel went to her. All right, so we can go ahead and maybe place. Don't tell me like where will Mary be when the angel comes and visits her? What do we imagine? Is this at night? Is this during the day? I think day might be easiest for us to see.
It's the day in the back of the house or something. So I watched a movie one time.
Okay, because the movie was definitely right, I'm sure. Yeah, I watched the movie once, and then. All right, so.
Well, it's a movie they call it Bible.
Does it say that?
No. It's the Bible.
I get it. Okay, so we're gonna have Mary outside.
Yeah.
And then Gabriel comes to Mary. Okay. Now so Mary can probably walk around and stuff, right? Yeah. And is wherever she is, Gabriel's gonna come.
No, probably we can do the mass collider on the owl, the Gabriel.
Well, no, don't go into the details of how to pull off. Let's just think what we want to portray here. So we have kind of a city here. Is Mary going to be wandering the city? She can kind of go and look around and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, Gabriel comes upon her, or do we have a situation where when Mary comes upon, like, hits a trigger, gets near something, maybe there's a fountain or something like that. That's when Gabriel comes out.
Yeah, it's the sound coming in the sound direct her to the Gabriel.
Okay, so let's look at how we can make this happen. So we're going to have Mary interact with something. So let's go back into our here's our prefabs. We have chairs, columns, fences, houses, stairs, storage, tables. What's storage look like? So we could put like a chest out there somewhere and make that the thing that Mary interacts with. So that's one possibility. What's a complex prefab? We can have some barrels or some boxes, and when Mary goes near that, that's when Gabriel gets triggered, or three things of firewood. I mean, what do we imagine? Mary's going to walk up to something, and that's going to be what causes Gabriel to come down. So Mary's going to be kind of like exploring the area. What's the what do we want her to?
She's going to collect some wood for dinner.
Collect some wood for dinner. All right, so we have this firewood. All right, so let's put this firewood. Let's see, where do we want to put it in our scene? Maybe back here somewhere, kind of out away from things. Well, it looks like potentially that firewood is actually on fire. No, it's not. It's just lit. All right, so that's going to be our firewood. Let's go see what that looks like here real quick. We'll put it at 0. All right, so this is the firewood back here. All right, so we want to have a situation that when we click on this firewood, for example, right now, that starts the interaction with Gabriel. All right, so we want to know when that's happened, when this object's been clicked on. All right, so let's start with that. We'll have to change that interaction later. when we're actually moving around in VR. But for right now, let's just get the basics working. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to add a script to the firewood. So we're going to create a C# script. Let's call this firewood. Gabe Trigger. Let's call it that. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on that script. We'll get that opened. Now, this script definitely needs to know about Gabriel, right? It needs to know about Gabriel. So right off the bat, we're going to make a public variable here. Public game object Gabriel. Okay, because Gabriel's not just going to be sitting in the center of town like he is right now. So what we want to have when we click that thing, Gabriel's going to kind of fly in, or something. That's what we want to happen. Let's just get Gabriel showing up first. So let's go back in here. And here's our firewood thing here. We're going to drag that script into our firewood. Okay, and it's expecting the Gabriel game object. We need to let it know about that because I made that a public variable. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag Gabriel into that. All right, so now that script knows about Gabriel. Now I'm going to go and position Gabriel, or Gabriel. Let's rename him. Gabriel. All right, so I've clicked on Gabriel. I'm going to go ahead and move him kind of over here by the flames. And I'm going to rotate him so he's kind of like standing behind the wood. Okay, so for starters, so this is going to kind of... All right, what's probably going to make the most sense, initially at least, is we're going to go ahead and when this script starts, we're going to take Gabriel and reposition him way off the scene. Maybe put him, right now Gabriel is basically at a height of 0. We can maybe throw Gabriel way up in the air at 1,000. And then have him come back down to 0. So right now, let's just walk over there and make sure Gabriel's where we think he's going to be. Make sure it's positioned reasonably. Okay, that looks reasonable enough. All right, so now let's go ahead and just so we see him on the screen initially, we don't lose him 1,000 units up. Let's go ahead and have the trigger for that wood. Let's have the wood on start reposition Gabriel. Okay. So we'll go in here. Here's that wood. We already have access to Gabriel, and we're going to go ahead and say vector3 pause is equal to this dot Gabriel dot transform dot position, and then we'll say pause dot y is equal to 1,000, and then we'll say this dot Gabriel dot transform dot position is equal to pause. All right, so right at the very beginning, we'll go ahead and reposition Gabriel to be wherever he currently is, but 1,000 units up. Make sense? So on start, we have our game object Gabriel. I'll go ahead and grab his current position as a vector 3. I'll change that vector 3's Y position to 1,000, which is the up direction. And then I'll go ahead and set Gabriel's transform position back to that new updated pause. Okay. Now, one thing we could do is we could say it's the original pause or something, but let's just get him out of the way first. So on start, Gabriel should be out of the picture because he's really just way up in the sky, and hopefully he's too far up there that we can't look up and see him. But I guess we'll... All right, so no Gabriel right now. I think he's too high up. We can't see him. So he, quite frankly, is in heaven. All right, so now we want to go and we want something to happen when we click on the wood. So let's respond to a mouse click first. Then later on, when we bring this into VR, we're probably going to respond to like a touch, or really more than likely, it's going to be us kind of moving into an area. So instead of us actually interacting with something, as soon as we kind of get in the area of the wood, we'll say that we're close enough. Okay, and then that'll trigger it automatically. So Mary kind of wanders around, and maybe we give some sort of some clues or something to get her to go over by the wood. Maybe like Tim mentioned, maybe it's like, oh, you got to gather wood for dinner. Go find the wood or something like that. And that's kind of what tells her to go over there. And then she's, she'll trigger it. But right now, to trigger it, we're going to click. Okay. So go back into our code here. And then we have this thing called on mouse down. So on mouse down is going to get called when the object that this guy is attached to gets clicked on. But it's not going to be the let go of the click. It's going to be the original click down on it. Okay. You can choose which one you prefer, and for right now, let's just do a print clicked. Just proving the interaction is working. All right, because we're kind of hoping it fakes it out correctly, because right now we're making our guy move in a certain way. If this doesn't work, we might need to bring our first-person shooter player in temporarily, but I think we can make this work. All right. So go and test this. Click on my console here. All right. Does not seem to be allowing the click.
Yes, red point. Yeah, that's
yeah, but it's not. That red point is for interaction in. I think it's faking VR interactions. Maybe that's what we can do. Standard interactions. So is this like the hand controls? Or, hold on a second. Let's go to the 3 firewood thing. We might need to put a collider on this guy. It's possible that you need a box collider or some type of collider in order for clicks to work. That doesn't seem to make a difference. And the issue here is that player is not moving. So if I'm clicked on player here, notice here's my player guy. And if you look at the transform for player as I'm moving around, you see how player is not actually moving. Yeah. So that kind of becomes the issue with this. So let me see if I can create an alternative to that player. Delete the player there. So as of right now, we do not have a camera in our scene. So if I hit play, I mean, if you go to game, there's nothing because I just deleted the VR camera. So we're going to put something as a temporary placeholder, and I'm pretty sure Steam VR comes with it. Let's look at prefabs. No. Extras. Interaction system, core. Well, that's all for player. I don't think that'll move. Let's do this. I'm going to go to Asset Store. I'm going to go to FPS. I thought it came with Steam VR. All right, we're going to do it this way then. It's going to be a little, I think maybe ghetto. So let me go into this, then interaction system, then core, then prefabs, then player. We'll throw our player back in there. Let's get our player position back on the scene. So we'll put the player at 0.5 like he had him before. So now let's see if we can drive our player similarly. No, because it's going to override those keyboards, because our player does have a rigid body. Does it not? I wanted to drive the player as if it was a like that rollerball to get through the scene. But we really need a no. I think we could do that. I think for right now we could actually put the ball on the scene. Will that let us do it? To drive around? So let's create a, let's delete that player. I'm going to go ahead and create a sphere. We're going to call that guy player for right now. And then I'm going to add a camera to that player. All right, I'll rotate that camera down just a little bit. All right, so now initially that's what our scene looks like. So then actually with this in mind, what I'm going to do just for the moment, so we stop having all those errors, I'm going to right click on Steam VR and we're going to delete it. Okay, so now it just launches normally. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and be able to drive the ball around, right? So we're going to add our forces. So let's go ahead and actually steal our script from that one. So we've already written a player movement script. All right, so just steal the whole script here. So that's our player movement script. So we'll recreate it in our project now, and we'll add it to that player. So I'll go to scripts. We'll create a new C# script. I'll just call this guy movement. Double click on that. And then we will paste that in there. We'll get rid of the collect thing. That. Okay, and now we will have it so our we'll attach this to our sphere so that we can hopefully drive the sphere around town and have the camera always above. Let's go back to this guy. Go to my player, drag the movement script on here. And this guy takes the speed. I don't remember what speed we thought was good, but let's just go with 5 initially. I can't tell. Oh, he doesn't have a rigid body yet. So here's our player. We need to go ahead and give him a rigid body. And does our plane has a mesh collider. I don't think our sphere is going to fall through on this, will it? Yep, there we go.
Well, you have to continuously set that transform to the camera.
Yeah, because the camera is rolling with the ball.
Yeah.
This is what we really should do in VR. And just like see how long you last.
To test your motion sickness. I think I'll win.
All right, so we need this guy to know about the camera. Didn't we? We had it relative to the camera before, didn't we? That script didn't have it in there. Okay, well, whatever. All right, so we're going to get the relative position. Yeah, we did write this previously, right?
Right, we had to make the camera not a child of the...
And then update it?
Yeah.
Because right now it's literally moving with the sphere, which is rolling.
Right. But we didn't have anything where we could change the orientation of the camera, like look in a different direction.
All right, so now what we want to do is we need to have like a follow script on the camera so that at all times when the, we'll tell the camera who he's supposed to follow. And at all times he'll keep himself that distance from it, right? And we probably wrote that. Is that what we did last time? We wrote a follow script? Yeah, this thing called camera controller. So we let him know about the player. Yep, so we'll put that in there. So I'll create a new script. We'll call this guy camera controller. What's this one? Open that up here. All right, so the camera controller is going to know about the player, so we'll have to let him know about the player. At the very beginning, we're going to get the offset. This is the position of the camera relative to the position of the player. And then we're going to maintain that offset. So in late update happens last. So if we miss a frame, not the end of the world, okay, then we're going to update the transform of the camera to be wherever the player currently is plus the offset where we've maintained. Okay? So let's go ahead and put our camera controller on our camera. And then this guy needs to know about the, don't I have player as public? There we go. So we'll let him know about the player. I have to do that again because I had the whole thing running still. All right, now I let him know about the player. Okay, so now the camera should maintain position. I think we might want to get it a little bit higher. Yeah, there we go. So it's probably not the most ideal way to traverse our scene, but we can get around the scene this way.
What are you talking about? It's perfect.
It's perfect. All right, so see if that's a little better. Okay, so now what we do is we maybe have a box collider associated with this guy, because I think right now we do have a thing where I can click him, and I think he should have. So let's give a box collider to our three pieces of wood. I expected the click to work on that guy, though. I wonder if the box collider is not as big as I think it is, because this guy's like a generic object. All right, so let's go straight above it. All right, so I'm going to have like a big, actually we'll do it, we'll make them, you have to be kind of in front. A big area as you come up here. So this is going to be the box collider for this dude, and we're going to have a trigger associated. We're going to have it be a trigger. Now, trigger says, don't treat this guy with normal physics. Instead, let me know when there's an interaction. Okay? So as our ball rolls into this box collider here, and we need to make sure our ball has a rigid body and a collider, and I think it already does. It has a sphere collider, and it's a rigid body. So when he rolls into the this box associated with that, and let's just make sure the box is kind of on the ground. Oh, it's like rotated. Okay. Let me. So we'll edit this collider, and I'm going to change its height. Oh, wrong way. All right. We should definitely be able to collide with that now, right? Just walk into that wedge. Okay. It's because the wood is kind of sitting at a weird angle. And so there's our box collider. I've set this collider up as a trigger. So this is a new concept. Right? So when something is a trigger, or do we have triggers before? We had triggers for our collections, right? Okay, so when this is a trigger, we're going to have to write in our script. In this case, we'll write it inside of the firewood grab script that this trigger was entered. Let's try to notice that first. So we'll come in here. Here's our firewood thing here. So instead of this guy, we're going to say on trigger enter. We'll say print triggered for right now. So let's go ahead and roll on over to that box and see if we can get it to say triggered. And then if that works, then we're going to go ahead and have Gabriel come down. All right, so there's our triggered. All right, so when that happens, we probably want a couple things to happen. Do we want our player to maybe stop? Maybe initially let's just get Gabriel to come down. So we're going to update when that happens. We're going to update we're going to update Gabriel. So now Gabriel was repositioned by this script when we first started. So what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to say vector 3 orig pos. This is going to be private. So we're going to hold the XYZ coordinate of the original position of that. Then we're going to say vector 3 pos is equal to this dot orig pos. Just in case we decide we're going to position Gabriel in an area where he's not necessarily at 0. All right, so we're going to go ahead and when we first start, we'll grab the current position of Gabriel. And we're going to store that in a variable called orig pos of type vector 3. Then we'll go ahead and copy the contents of orig pos into a new vector 3 variable called pos. I'll adjust that guy's y to be 1,000 and set Gabriel to that new position. Now when we trigger this, what we actually want to do is we want to set Gabriel back to his original position. So this dot Gabriel dot transform dot position is equal to this dot orig pos, like that. So now hopefully when we walk up there, we trigger it, Gabriel pops up in front of us instantaneously. All right, there's Gabriel. All right, so now Gabriel's, yeah, see, we need to give some controls for rotation. No, arrows. This is the same controls as we had for the sphere initially. So it would be QE for rotation, right?
That's what I would suggest.
Yeah. Or I guess we could do ZC if we want to stay low on the keyboard for right now. All right. So let's do a ZC, just so we're low on the keyboard where it's at. This is temporary controls anyways, because we need to have the ability to kind of pan around. Right? Although, is that going to... I think the camera should rotate with us because it'll update the position based on our current transform. I think that's okay. All right, so we do have something called, well, it's called Slurp. So Unity 3D Slurp rotation. So rotations in Unity are done with something called a quaternion. It's a mathy thing. Now, you don't want to do quaternions yourself. You don't want to do that rotation yourself. Instead, you want to let the game engine figure out the rotations for you. This is actually something that Unity recommends. The math is possible because they've done the math. But I don't know quaternion math, but my understanding is it's not easy. Do you know anything about it? Tim?
No, not really.
Well, yeah, he's a mathematician, right?
Oh,
Yeah, so so this guy's got a degree in mathematics and doesn't know, kind of vaguely has heard of quaternions. It's not friendly, but it's correct. The engine does it for us. Okay, so we have this thing called Slurp that will allow us to rotate to a certain position at an angle. Now, I think what we want to do is we want to... Those are going to be two public things. Let's look at rotating 90 degrees with a slurp. And then we can back it off from there. Oh, this is Euler angles. We don't want that. Oh, this could work without the slurp, because then we could say rotate right or yeah, let's try that. That'll be without the slurp. It'll be quick rotation, so we probably want to maybe rotate like 30 or something like that just to kind of get us positioned. So let's try that. So we would get Z and C as our keys for rotation. So this is movement, and this is on our, so we're going to ask the question here. We're going to say if input dot key down key code dot Z. So if the Z key is pressed down, we want to rotate left at maybe let's do it 30 degrees at a time, something like that. So we're going to do, we're going to take our current transform, we're going to rotate. So that's going to be this dot transform dot rotate. So you can actually rotate around an axis too, but let's just rotate here. And we're going to rotate at vector 3 right, except in this case we'll do vector 3 left. And let's do 30 and 0 on the Z. If key code C, then we'll do vector 3 right, 30 degrees. All right, that'll allow us to at least position our guy a little bit. Let's see what this looks like just so we can kind of turn. So we put this on our movement script, which is attached to our sphere. So now inside a fixed update, we're going to ask, was either the Z or C key pressed? If it was, react to that. Okay. And I'm trying to rotate. Doesn't appear to be doing anything. Let's make sure we're getting into these things. Print Z. Print C. It is possible it's rotating the ball, and then the camera isn't updating with it. So, which would mean that we then need to rotate the camera at the same time as we're rotating the ball. Yeah, so it is getting C and Z. So my feeling is the ball is rotating. So I think we need to let movement know about the camera as well so we can rotate that guy at the same rate. So movement is going to know about a public, we could just call it a game object, camera. We'll do this dot camera dot transform dot rotate vector 3 dot left 30 0. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing down here, but we'll rotate it on the right. And then we need to let this script know about that camera. So here's our player that has the movement script that's now expecting a camera. So I'll go ahead and drag the camera over here. Okay. Now I'll hit play and let's see if he rotates. Oh, he is rotating, but he's not rotating.
Oh, it's rotating just the camera. It's not rotating around the ball.
Well, yeah, I was hoping that if the ball's position is changing, that the camera would rotate.
The camera is off the ball, and the camera is just rotating. It's not going around the ball itself.
Right, but the camera should be updating its position relative to the offset of the ball, but that's the XYZ position. So even though the sphere is rotating there, its X, Y, and Z position isn't changing. Its orientation on that is changing. So maybe we really need to, instead of rotating the camera, we need to set the camera's rotation to be the same as the player's rotation. Let's try that. So we have a script. So I'm going to just comment out this rotation of the camera. We're not going to rotate the camera in here. Instead, what we're going to do is in the camera controller, this is where we're changing the position of that for the player. But then we want to say this dot transform dot rotation is going to be the same as the player transform rotation. Let's see if that mimics how the player is turning at any point in time. So it's still going to stay the same distance, but then we'll rotate it the way the player should be facing. Ruh-roh. Oh, back to the old problem because it's so we need the camera not to. That's like a terrible problem.
I love it. Oh,
Yeah,
the
so
offset. Can we rotate that offset and then add that?
possibly. So you want to say, oh, but the offset is a position, not a rotation.
Right.
It's a vector 3. It's not a transform, so you can't rotate it because it's not a transform.
But if we can rotate that position.
Be easier just to go get the VR helmet. You want to turn? Here we are. We're there. Oh yeah. Yeah, because I mean, that's why I was looking for that. There's an FPS thing, and I really thought it was in Steam VR.
Is there any way to specifically make the camera follow a path?
Probably.
Because if we could get some sort of, I don't know, if
Apparently,
it
you
would
can
be
make
an
the
object.
transform look at the target.
Okay, so we can maybe say on update here for camera controller, we can say this dot transform dot
Wait, what's rotate around?
that rotates around an axis.
Apparently, there's a look at.
So look at, it's a transform target. So this dot player dot transform, something like that. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so maybe now we need to do the camera rotation and then say look at. Because now the camera's not rotating at all. Yeah, I just don't think this is the way to do it.
You can rotate. You can translate the transform, and that'll flip it.
See, I think that's why I kind of wanted to have the camera stay with us. What if we changed the sphere to no longer be a... Let me try something here. The sphere is a rigid body. I can set angular drag. No, I don't think that'll make a difference. Yeah, what I really wanted to do is I wanted to use Steam's FPS controller because that has all this built into it. And I really thought it came with Steam VR. There's like a prefab for it.
I'm finding using vector 3s for like offset and what the position might be.
Where I'm just getting at, we don't need to solve this problem. It's already solved. And I'm sure we can solve it. Oh, you know what I bet it is? It's, I know where it's in. I think it's called Unity. Oh, by the way, this is the, Tim, this is the stuff we'll use at the hackathon, the ARKit plugin for Apple's new thing. Yep. So if any of you are interested in going to that, I need to know about it like as soon as possible because we're arranging rides and stuff.
That's on Saturday?
That's a week from, we leave a week from tomorrow for the weekend.
The 24-hour hackathon.
Yep.
And then I'm trying to line up like 3 more. I don't know if we're actually doing anything, but I've found like 3 more. 2 minutes? Oh, yeah, I want to do Madison. Oh, I figured out that you can still come to Madison, but you'll be a mentor instead of like a member of the team.
Yeah, I gotcha. I'm trying to think what's the name of that basic asset for Unity. Standard assets. That has a standard assets has a FPS built into it. Pretty certain. So this is something that's like, you know, it's a Unity provided package for doing generic stuff. Yeah, here's first person character controller. And then we'll just swap that out for the VR one when we're ready to jump to VR. And we'll do everything with triggers for right now for the Hopefully I get my new laptop this week or early next week, so I'll have it for next class. Because Unity ends up pushing your GPU pretty hard when you're doing a lot of stuff, so like this thing's like just really hot. So I got a laptop with a GTX 1070 in it, which should be able to handle Unity very easily. But we'll also start bringing down the cart for the VR stuff. I just set that up this afternoon. Okay, so here's standard assets. Go back to our scene. I'm going to dump the player and the camera. Standard assets, characters, first-person controller, prefabs, FPS controller. This guy should come with a camera and everything. Okay, and then we need to place him on the scene. So I'm going to first, let's start at the plane. Where's this player? Let's position him on here. Right around there. All right, there we go. Okay, so now we have a good way of moving around. You like that sound? How long till that gets old? All right, so here's my controller. I'm pretty sure, so you can adjust walk speed and stuff like that. I think we can turn off footstep sounds. Well, at the very least, I can, there. I can do that for right now. Okay. So, after Gabriel comes down, he's going to start having a conversation with us. Now, we probably want two different ways for this to happen. We can have audio, right? Have him, you know, a big booming voice, something like that. But I also think having something that's readable might be helpful. What do you think? Do you want the end user to have to listen to the sound, listen to the speech, or should the speech be playing, but also they can read the message? Okay, you think both? All right, so then we need the ability to kind of write messages. So we need kind of this message controller deal, okay, that will show messages anytime. And by the way, if you get this, the first-person controller from the standard assets, once the game starts, you're in it. So it takes over the mouse. That way you can steer with the mouse. So when you want to go stop it, you have to hit escape, and that gives you control of the mouse again. So you can actually stop that guy. All right, so let's spend a few more minutes getting some text up on the screen before we take our last break. So where do you want the text to appear? Should text I'm thinking we're going to be showing text at various points in here. So the player should kind of have this like text thing that kind of sits in front of them, like a way to show the player some text. Does that make sense? Almost like a heads-up display. All right, so what I'm going to do for right now, we might change this when we go to do this in VR, but I'm going to put some text in front of the player. So I'm going to add some 3D text. So I'm going to right-click on our player, and I'm going to add a 3D object. And this guy's going to be called 3D text. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and position that in front of my player. All right, now I'm gonna go from a top view. We'll slide this guy over. Oh, that's the wrong thing. I want to move the text. Okay, so that looks relatively centered. I'm gonna go ahead and on this the text. So we're gonna call this let's call it text over here. And right now I'm just going to put a big 0 on it. That way we can see it kind of in the middle. Then I'll click on my first person character and we see that it's not currently in the scene. All right, so my text was over some, but now I've changed the offset of my character, so now that text is centered. All right. So right off the bat, that text is fuzzy, right? All right, so the way we fix that, we're going to click on our text. We're going to change the character size and change the scale. So I'm going to make the character size, let's say 100. And then let's say the scale is going to be 0.02, 0.02, 0.02. All right, so now we need to scale it down even more. Let's throw an extra 0 in there. All right, starting to sharpen. So basically the way to get it sharper, and we probably actually should go even more than that. The way to get it sharper is to make the font size really big and then scale it way down. So let's go with that. And then we'll have a character size of, let's do 200. Let's do 150. Let's back this off one. See what that looks like. Now, let's just say it's good enough. Okay, so we have text that's kind of on the screen and relatively clear. I'm going to position my guy so it's somewhat centered. I'm going to move the text down just a bit. So now it's kind of at your eye line. Okay. All right, so now when this pops up, we want some dialogue to occur. Oh, did we not hit it? There we go. We want some dialogue to start. Now, you don't want to just have text floating in front of you at all time, right? We need to have a way of sending information to our player, having kind of a dialogue that plays out. Now, in most of our things that we write in this class for your projects, there's going to be various dialogues, right? We're going to have stuff that's going to go back and forth. So we want to have a mechanic for kind of pulling this off. Now, the dialogue is always going to play out to the current player, the person who's experiencing the scene, right? All right, so we need a way of sending text to a player and having that player update their, having that HUD get updated, all right? So we have to have a way of sending information to the player's text. So what I'm going to do here, escape, is we're going to add a script for our text. Because remember, this 3D text is just a game object like any other game object. All right, so we're going to have a C# script, and we're going to call this guy text controller. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and drag the text controller onto our text. Now we're going to go ahead and edit our text controller. Now before we go in there, look at our text. So inside of our text controller, we have this thing called a text mesh. All right, so the text mesh is the component whose text property we want to set to put text on the screen. Does that make sense? So that means that just like we've done before, we've gotten the component for a rigid body or something like that, we're going to get the component of the owner of the script. Which component? The text mesh component. All right, so we'll prove this. So we'll go in here. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to create a private variable. I've typed text mesh. Call that TM. And then in start, we'll say this dot TM is equal to this dot get component of type text mesh. And then just to prove we did it, let's say this dot TM dot text is equal to LOL. So now we're going to programmatically modify our text. Stop that. So now the player should have an LOL sitting in front of them. All right, so we've programmatically modified our text. Now, when Gabriel comes out, really it's the collider for, so if we think about that thing, the wood that's there, when we stumble upon the wood, that wood triggers a dialogue, correct? So it's really the wood that's going to let us start kind of control the conversation. Or we can say the wood summons Gabriel, then Gabriel is then going to have the conversation with us. Okay? So that means we need to give Gabriel the ability to talk to us. Now, we're going to have an audio aspect of it, but for right now, Gabriel needs to have the ability to say something to us when he kind of flies in. All right? Now, right now, Gabriel just kind of pops up, and I don't know if that's ultimately the way we want to have it, but we can just roll with that and say it's okay. So we need to have a way for Gabriel to get something to us. So here's Gabriel, and he has the Gabriel script. Now, Gabriel's script is going to be the guy that says start, something like that, right? So we're going to change the way we're mechanically doing this a little bit so we kind of see how things can kind of get compartmentalized. So initially, what we're going to do is we're going to write into Gabriel's script the ability for him to banish himself and summon himself. So banish is going to go up to 1,000. Summon is going to bring him back down. But now what we're doing is we are making Gabriel in charge of his position on the screen, rather than the magical sticks that can shoot Gabriel up in the air, like, you know, no big deal. All right, so we're going to change the way some of this is done, but it's going to be the same code, just we're moving it into some different places. And we're going to learn about this concept called send message that allows us to kind of get the ball rolling for some of these things. So I'm going to go into the Gabriel script. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a private vector3 called origpos. And when this guy starts, we're going to say this dot origpos is equal to this dot transform dot position. And then I'm going to say private vector3, call this guy hidden pos. We'll say this dot hidden pos is equal to this dot origpos, and then we'll say this dot hidden pos dot y plus equals 1,000. So that'll take whatever its current y is and zip it up into the sky. But we haven't actually moved him at this point. We've just kept track of two different vector 3s. We know his position on the ground, his original position. We know his position up in the sky. All right, so now we're going to write a couple of methods in here for banishing and summoning. Okay. So we're going to have public void, how do you spell banish? 1N or 4? Like that, banish. And banish is going to say this dot transform dot position is equal to this dot hidden position. Then we're going to say public void summon this dot transform dot position is equal to this dot origpos. So two simple methods that have the ability to just reposition Gabriel. Okay. So now, if you remember, our stick script, Firewood Gabe Trigger, this guy, he's the one who's keeping track of Gabriel's original position right now. So, and he's the one who's sending him off the screen and all this stuff. And he's the one that's repositioning him later on. What we want to do here instead is when Gabriel first comes onto the screen, we want to banish him, right? So we want to tell Gabriel, go away. We're not going to make him move away. We're going to ask him to go away. Go ahead.
We can have Gabriel banish himself at the beginning.
We can, but the issue where we maybe lose that here, well, I get what you're saying. We could have Gabriel banish himself. Let's at least practice it in here because this is the guy that's going to respond to the trigger. Yeah, so, but he brings up a good point. So this is kind of the game we're playing. We're deciding who's in charge of what. And, you know, a good rule of thumb would be try to mimic reality as much as you can. But sometimes you can cheat with the, with programming. So you can say, I really want these pile of sticks to be in charge of kind of a lot, So this pile of wood can do all sorts of stuff in your scene that, in real life, a pile of wood would not be able to do. But sometimes that might make sense. But just to kind of see how this logic works, when the scene first starts, we're going to go ahead and say this dot Gabriel dot send message. We're going to send a message to Gabriel. And this guy takes in the name of the method, and then we can also send in a value if we want. If we need to give an input to the method. In this case, we don't need an input. So we're just going to say, I want to send the message banish. Let's make sure I spelled it the same way as we did in Gabriel. Yep, lowercase. Similarly, when we enter the trigger, we're going to say this dot Gabriel dot send message summon. Now, what's important about this idea of send message? We think about Gabriel here. If I click on here, here's Gabriel. Gabriel only has one script associated with him, right? But he could have more. Let's say he had 5 scripts associated with him. When I send a message to Gabriel, all of his scripts are going to get that message. So any script that has a banish function in it, we'll try to call it. Just kind of keep that, and sometimes that's what you want. You might have a whole bunch of scripts associated with Gabriel, and when he's banished, you want to turn a bunch of stuff off, right? So you kind of have they all have a what happens when I'm banished script, and and those things turn off. All right, so we're going to send the message to him. So let's make sure he disappears initially. So right now Gabriel is gone. We'll walk up here. We interact with the sticks. Am I hitting him? Oh, there he is. Did I add to the wrong? Because he looks about 1,000 away right now. I wonder if I added to the wrong thing for placing him. We'll check that when we come back. Let's just so we have our timing right. So let's take a 10-minute break. That way we'll have our last hour right before we're done, and I'll get this uploaded.